Welcome to the Behind the Frame podcast, hosted by me, Rebecca Yale. I'm a destination wedding photographer and educator working in the luxury marketplace, and on this podcast, I'll be pulling back the curtain, sharing what goes on behind the scenes working in the luxury wedding industry. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Behind the Frame podcast. I know I always start by saying that I have a very special guest with me today, and that's true that all of my guests are special and amazing, but I am extra excited today because today's guest is not only an incredible entrepreneur, creative mind, she just so happens to also be my best friend, amazing creative consultant, Sarah Love. Sarah K. Love runs a leading digital creative agency that specializes in branding, digital marketing, and content strategy for creative professionals, wedding industry pros, and lifestyle brands. After a rewarding career working for InStyle Magazine and America's Next Top Model photographer Nigel Barker, Sarah became a lover of all things weddings and spent 5 years at the Knot magazine as a photo editor. From there, it was a natural next step for Sarah to found her own agency in order to craft innovative, boundary-pushing narratives, striking visual content, and authentic strategies for brands that let their imaginations run wild. Complete with a roster of top-notch marketing, branding, and design gurus, Sarah K. Love is here to make brands stand out and adds a little bit of love to your life. And I can say that she absolutely does that. On a personal note, I met Sarah via email for the first time in 2016 when she published one of my weddings in the Knots National issue, which I think came out in early 2017. And we worked on a couple more weddings together while she was at the Knot, including the Knot Dream Wedding, and we instantly became friends. What should have been a 5-minute phone call about a photo turned into a 2-hour call about our lives, which became the first of countless marathon phone calls, many lasting way more than 2 hours, that we've had together over the last 7 years. Sarah and I came into one another's lives during times of immense upheaval for both of us. She was leaving the Knot and moving to Los Angeles to start her own business. And I had just recently moved from New York to LA myself, and I was in the throes of my Ehlers-Danlos diagnosis. And while we were very different people, we saw kindred spirits in one another. And I feel like I have known her all my life, and I felt that from that very first phone call. And fun fact, we both married men named Nick, who we both started dating within months of each other. And I had the honor of photographing her wedding. And she is now redoing my branding and website. So we have both experienced not only being one another's friends and work besties, but also one another's clients. So we both have interesting insight into working with each other. And now, okay, I'm going to stop gushing. And so I think like we're both already in tears. But I'm going to stop so I can welcome the amazing, without further ado, I feel like I need a drum roll, Sarah K. Love. Welcome to the pod.
Thanks. I love your intro. I'm all emotional.
Deep breaths, deep breaths. We're going to get through this together.
I know, and hopefully it won't take 2 hours or maybe 3. I don't know. We'll see.
So today we're going, as I said, we could talk about a million things, but I'm going to keep us focused. So today we're going to talk about all things branding, for which Sarah is my guru. So many of my students' gurus, so many top people in the industry, she is their guru. And we're going to talk about how to position yourself to catch the eye of amazing editors like herself and our ideal clients. But before we dive into that, I'd love, Sarah, for you to share with us how you found your way into the world of weddings.
So I moved to New York when I was 22, right out of college, hoping to get a job, and I didn't have any prospects. So I ended up printing out a resume and kind of doing the door to door, trying to see if I could stumble upon a job. And I ended up getting a job with Nigel Barker, who is a fashion photographer for America's Next Top Model. And that,
which we're showing our age, by the way, because I'm like, duh, like who wouldn't know that? And it's like any millennial obviously grew up like knowing what a smize was. And stupid Gen Z. No, we love you, Gen Z. We love you.
Well, but also it was
but you make us feel
it was
old.
a big deal like a long time ago, and now
it was a big deal. It's a really big deal.
It was such a big deal. I was excited because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to learn how to smize. So I ended up doing a lot of the photo production. So he'd be working with a lot of different brands. He'd be working with magazines. He'd be working with models and doing photo shoots. So a lot of that was just the production side of things, day-to-day side for the photo shoots that he did. So I really became intrigued and also loved being on set and, kind of getting to see the creative direction from the very beginning to the end to the shoot day. And then on top of that, a lot of it was working with the client, which is a little different even from when I was at the Knot. But a part of this was working with the client and making sure that the client was happy. If he was photographing for a magazine cover or a jewelry brand or whatever it was, he was making sure that the images that he was producing was going to actually work from the client, not just from that creator's perspective that he wanted to do. So from there, I moved to InStyle. I uh, He ended up doing a lot of marketing and photographing for InStyle. And I was like, seems like a great jump and leap into things. So I was in style for about a year and then moved over to the Knot. Um, and I started at the Knot magazine as a beta program for the concierge they had for.
Oh, that is how we met first in 2014.
Yep,
Yes, that was
yep.
when we first emailed. Okay.
So, yeah, so that was when we first emailed. And I did that for about 3 or 4 months, and then the photo editor position opened up. But that was like a beta trial, and so a lot of it was talking with photographers and venues, and it was a very interesting kind of program to help brides plan their wedding. Um, and so that's how I started. Then I moved over. A photo editor position came available, and I was like, "This is my calling." So from the concierge position, I moved over to the photo editor position that had opened up, and I did that for about 5 years. And one of the great things, just kind of the evolution of working there, was, part of the position was, at the very beginning, a lot was just the overall photo credits and getting the licensing and understanding, images and the value behind them and other people's work and the artistry that comes with that. The actual curating side of things as well, when it came to the national and regional magazines, and making sure that the images work together in a layout, or they make sense as used to tell a story. And then the production side of things. From the production side of things, a lot of more of the digital marketing element, where the more brand partnerships that we would do with Crate and Barrel or Williams Sonoma, you're again wanting to make sure that you're working specifically with the client. And so when you have that partnership, that you're achieving everything that the client wants, but also getting your goal at the Knot as well. So a little bit of everything, I would say, over the time
Had your
span.
fingers on the pulse of a
Yes,
little bit of
yes, a little
everything.
bit of everything, and it was great because then you kind of got to see, and then I was able to see what stuck and what I liked, and how it had kind of evolved from there.
So from there, you made the leap that I think a lot of professionals in the wedding industry who are listening in are looking to do, whether they're at a 9 to 5 and they're looking to go full time in weddings, or they're working as an editor, kind of the type of work that you were doing, and they want to start their own businesses and be a consultant on their own. And that's a big, scary thing to decide to set out and do. And I know I talked to so many photographers who, are maybe doing like 5, 6 weddings a year, and they still have full-time jobs that they're doing. And these is like their side hustle, but they want to go full-time. So tell me what that leap was like. Of you moved jobs and moved cities at the same time. You double leaped. So what was that like?
Oh my God, it was a journey, to say the least, which you were very much part of. And a lot of that was, when I left, it was really interesting because you know, you kind of do feel like you're on the top of the world a little bit, right? Like, a lot of great people, and you're just kind of, you do assume that when you decide to do the next thing, that people are going to support you. And it's very interesting that sometimes they do not. And just how quickly, if you can't do something for someone, how quickly they do not care about you anymore. So it was that in and of itself, it's a little, maybe a little dark, but it was a really great learning experience, especially going into this new phase where you have to have, thick skin. And it was like kind of right away, I was like, oh my God, like this is really, I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was, just even at the very beginning. And I had gone through a lot of difficult conversations when I was leaving, And I remember calling you specifically and saying, so I'm leaving the knot and I'm not working on the dream wedding with you anymore, even though we'd spent countless hours editing and taking everything. Like, I'm going, I'm leaving, and but great 2 hour phone call with you. And you said, well, where are you going? And I said, well, I'm moving to LA. And you said, well, I live in LA. Come stay with me and hang out in my guest house and we'll do a brand shoot. And it was, to
Guest
this
room.
day,
I was not that fancy. I didn't have a guest house, for the record, but I did say that. I did say guest room, which I
you
did
did, you did.
have. I'm not that
Well,
fancy.
well, I mean, regardless, I came and stayed at your house.
You
And
sure
it
did.
was for weeks, and you helped me find an apartment and set me up. And that was kind of that was the very beginning of our friendship. And so I suffice to say, with all of that, I that was really the start. So I moved to LA, and I had some really incredible people that, again, you and your created this amazing, introduced me to a lot of people there. And slowly but surely, you kind of start to pick up on your friend group and the people that that are your people. A lot of it was, I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. I think when I started off out my business, and into the consulting side of things, there were a lot of people that had called and said, hey, I really need some help with curating my Instagram, or I need help curating some publications, or hey, do you mind looking at my overall branding? Hey, do you mind like looking at my website, and maybe just looking at the copywriting here? Is this something potentially you can help with? And really, what over the last 5 years, 5 or 6 years that I started my own business, the biggest element that I found for my clients and the biggest challenge for them was the cohesion. So a lot of the clients would say, listen, I need some help with curating, but I went to someone else for my branding. I went to someone else for my website. My sister is writing my copywriting. And then, if you can help me with the social media. And it was, no matter what phase that the client, like a client would come in, it was at a different phase, right? And I was trying to kind of figure out how to get it to um, look and feel, cohesive and a brand. And it wasn't working for a lot of my clients at all. And so really what I ended up doing, with a fabulous team that I had, kind of, uh, you know, uh, found throughout the years of all, the different places that I had been, is we ended up starting more of a full service agency, where you start with a consultation, and then from there you do the brand design. From the brand design, you do the website. From the website, you do social, and you do it in phases, because things change through each phase, right? In terms of who you are, and the look, the brand can feel and look different, and then that might change things for what the website looks like. So that's really kind of how, to answer the question. I mean, think of how it all ebbed and flowed to where I am.
I love that holistic approach to things. I think it's so important. And I think it's taking pride in your work and knowing that you don't want to put anything out there that's less than the best, because that's doing a disservice to your client. And it's the same that I say when it comes to my education. Like I just had my latest 201 launch, and I always have people who come to the webinar, and there's nothing again, like it's nothing wrong to ask it, but they're always like, oh, can I just get the pricing calculator, or can I just get this piece? And I always say no. And I know there's other educators out there that do like the piecemeal bits, but I'm like, it's putting the cart before the horse. Like, you need this foundation to like this, like, and you might get some benefit from it, but it wouldn't be the full benefit without this. Like, you need the foundation to get the full effect. And it's the same when it comes to branding and the marketing piece of positioning yourself. And that's like your amazing thoughts are part of the course. You so generously gave some tips to the students, and so many of my students have worked with you, and myself included. I'm working with you right now on redoing my brand, which will be so exciting when that premieres. We'll have to have you back on and maybe do like a whole thing just on what that experience, the world's most difficult client, a whole episode of just that.
I mean, I did give you a 75-page deck for my wedding photos, so
Yeah,
you know,
so we'll pay back.
we'll pay back. We'll pay back.
Yeah, good times. But I'd love to hear for someone who is like thinking of making that leap, like how did you, I mean, I think I'm like, I'm going to answer the question for you as I'm saying it of like, how did you find your first clients and start building that and take what you took from from the world that you had been in before as you're starting your own business? Like, where did you start?
A lot of it again was a lot of piecemeal at the very beginning. I will give a forever shout out to Rich of Chart Photo. The first year that I moved to LA, like he was, he just believed in me. And he needed, he really was like looking to level up and needed to do a lot of, work within his portfolio. And, he was also trying to figure out that I think a lot of photographers struggle with is just like where he fits in the market, right? He has a very specific editing style that was very different than the light and airy, which was kind of trending at the time, right? It's a little different for images now. Um, but again, so I would say like I had clients here and there, and then Rich really was like, listen, like I need to help me produce a shoot, you need to help with the curation, I need to redo my website, I need to look at my overall brand and like figuring out who I am, what I'm doing. And that was really for me where I he really helped me just because of what he needed to look at his brand and his overall goals as a whole.
And so Rich was someone that you had met through the knot and then brought that connection into your new business, right?
Yes, that's correct. So we had licensed photos from engagement sessions and weddings and things like that for different articles and such. So I had emailed with him and felt that connection. And so that was someone from the knot as well that I had.
Well, and I think that's when you said like some people were super supportive and some weren't. Like relationships in our industry can be so wonderful and so lovely, but they can also be very transactional. And I for sure had people who are like, what have you done for me lately? Like never gonna talk to you again or any of that. And that, you learn where people fall and then they pop like something exciting happens and they pop back up. Like I for sure had planners who when I moved to LA, like would not answer an email from me. And I had like friends literally reaching out and making introductions and they still wouldn't respond. And then like 2 years later, I'm on best of lists and they're in my inbox, like being like, oh, can't you discount for my client? And I'm like, bitch, you wouldn't respond to my email 2 years ago. But obviously I didn't say that because I am nice to everyone. But that all of it, I probably shouldn't be saying this on a public. I'm not naming names. Um, but
Who you are.
um, I'm not naming names. All I'm saying is that like try to have a heartfelt and genuine connection with people because that that's where the magic happens. And you don't need to have that connection with every single person who comes your way. Like it's just not going to work out that way. But the relationships that matter in our business are the ones that are heartfelt and the ones that aren't transactional. And you're actually caring as much about giving as you are getting and understanding that it's about more. And from a like full on just transactional look of things, like I just said, you never know where someone's going to end up. When I moved to LA and I was a baby photographer and reaching out to these people that were like, which like, I'm not saying that someone who doesn't email back is rude. Like I totally understand. Like I get emails that I can't respond to, or I responded with kind of a brush off. Cause like, we all have a capacity. Like I get it. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus. I'm just saying though that like someone like you who was at a point of starting your business and now you're a tastemaker in our industry and like who like you could start your own magazine someday, like where we have no magazines left, like you might start your own magazine someday. Like you never know where people are going to go. It's the like, look, I'm in LA, it's like every waiter that you meet is going to be the next Brad Pitt, like so be nice to all these waiters, that's like the joke we always say here in LA. You just like be friggin' nice to everyone, man.
You also are really pleasantly surprised when people are nice to you, right? And they're actually wanting to help. I remember Greg Fink as well. He did a hour, I had emailed him again just the days in the knot, and I said, "Hey, would you just want to pick my brain because I don't know what I'm doing with my life, and I need some help and direction because I just moved to Arizona from LA, and trying to kind of get things moving and grooving." And he sat and, gave me incredible insight. And, I think it's he might not even remember, but it's one of those things where I'll look back at those certain things that are said in that conversation and be really grateful for. Um, so I think it's one of those things where you never know where people are going to go. You never know how people are going to help you. And always repaying the favor too, you know?
Absolutely. I truly believe in paying it forward, and I truly believe that our community is like, it's the cliche of like rising tides rise all boats, but it's really true that like you just said, like you started working with Rich, and you sent Rich my way for my flat lay course, and Rich is still to this day like a huge, like he's like the preacher of my flat lay course, and has sent so many students to me, which like he's not paid for that, like he's doing it out of the kindness of his heart. I truly believe in education, like shouldn't be about kickbacks, and like people, yeah, I believe that like people should spread the word because they gain something from it and they want to share it with others, and he's been huge on that, and like I've directed people to his shoots. I just, yeah, it's you never
He's
know,
grown
like,
so much, and he's like tripled in pricing since then too, which is awesome. Go Rich, love you.
yeah, he's amazing. He hopeful future guest on here. Got to talk to him as well. But there's, yeah, you just be freaking nice to everyone. Like you don't need a genuine connection with everyone, but like try not to be transactional. And then if God, if all you really do care about is the transaction, like realize this person might end up helping you later. So even if you're being selfish, like be smart selfish.
Fun history, you know?
Value of today's, like every time, like every podcast episode, it's like soundbite. Be smart selfish,
Be
guys.
smart, selfish, but still be nice at the same time.
Perfect. Podcast over, guys. We don't even need to talk branding.
Now
We're
you're
done.
talking about branding.
Okay. Well, but I do want to talk with you about branding. So
Oh,
let's get into that, because you are my branding guru. Like in those early days too, when you were starting your business, you helped me so much. I was going through one of like many like mini redesigns of my website. Like this is the first time an outside person has made my website for me, which is super exciting. I've kind of always done it myself and like customizing templates. And you're like, uh-huh, I know it's a hot mess express. I'm in the back end of it. No, no need to tell me what I know, Sarah. Um, I'm arguing with myself. She's just smiling at me. That's how it normally is. Cool,
and it's
cool.
nodding. Yes.
Uh-huh. She's like, not, uh-huh. Yeah, okay. We're gonna be nice and smile. Um, but you help me so much in thinking about things like layout, in which photos are going next to each other on my home pages, what those photos are saying to my potential clients. And I think that that idea of like, what are my potential clients seeing when they're looking at these photos, is something that not enough of us photographers, planners, florists, all these things are thinking about. And it is vital. It is like if step one is like build your artistic voice, like build, like that's I call it R&D, research and development, like that's building your product. The second step after you've built your product is making sure you are putting your product out into the market in the right light. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Maybe like share some of the mistakes that you see people making. Yeah, give us your amazing insight.
It's a big topic. So what I know I want to start with is just like a few basics that when we talked, especially because a lot of times with my clients, they'll either know, they'll be like, I've been in this for 10 years. I know exactly who I am. I don't necessarily need to do this like little consult, like play child's game that you have going on. And a lot of times, and we've even had this conversation before we even did your consult, which was what's the ROI with branding? Because a lot of times it's really hard to see. But when you're starting with a solid strategy that gives you that effective branding, essentially, and it continues that voice with just the overall cohesion in every single level. Because a lot of times with branding, people think it's just from a visual side of things, when it also can when it has to do with looking at your competitors, when it has to do with, the copywriting and the overall vision and the goals that you have for your business in 5 or 10 years. The biggest, and
Branding is purely psychological. Sorry to interrupt, but
really,
I wanted to get that out there and just make sure that since you said ROI, for anyone listening out there who doesn't know these fancy terms that we're bandying about, that means return on investment. And I say for me, every dollar spent on me and my education, like any education thing, will have a high ROI. And the same is true of Sarah. And you should never make an investment that you don't think has a high ROI. And don't you dare spend a dime on marketing until you've done the branding, because you're putting the wrong work out there. Okay, so that's my little rant that I interjected. Now keep going. I
return on investment,
apologize.
starting with the strategy, have that brand, and I think I have it on here. That helps with increasing, right, the memorability that you have to your clients and to the business and what you're pushing out. It helps you attract your dream clients. It helps you build relationships. It establishes more trust and that authority in the marketplace as well. And eventually, you'll start to see, those higher conversion rates with that effective branding coming all the way through. I think, and even
And
at the
conversion rates on the clients you actually want.
right, exactly. And I think the other, and even just from the perspective is that I'm currently working on my rebrand. I did my website at this point, 5 or 7 years ago at this probably. And it's hot pink and I love it. And it worked really great when I was starting my business. But from the standpoint of the caliber of clients that I have, that the prices that I'm, charging now and all those things, it doesn't, it looks a little, it needs to be elevated and feel more mature than where my current site is right now. And I think a lot of times when I potentially am wanting to work with a corporate client, and doing potential things that aren't necessarily in the industry, the wedding industry, it can potentially deter a client just if that branding isn't necessarily where it needs to be, because it does look a little bit more childish than it should. So everyone kind of, including myself, has to go through that phase. But again, once you're understanding who you are, and that really is looking from the overall brand vision, and the goals that you have for your business. And Rebecca, we can even like use examples from your consults.
Yeah,
But
go
again, a
ahead.
lot of times with clients, it's like, what are the overall goals that we have for you? The biggest mistake, a very big mistake that I see clients do is they see a website or they see a brand, of someone in an industry that they like, and then they want to replicate it because they think it looks great. Let's talk about just the photo editing and the overall style of photos right now. That can be a big one where that's what's trending right now. And so everyone's site and all the branding that people are coming to me to potentially do are fitting this style. When in reality, that's not who they are. That's not how they photograph. And so again, I think there's a very fine line of trying to say and tell my clients, let's figure out who you are first, and then see how you fit into the mix with everybody else, because that's what's going to make you stand out. And then the other thing that I would say too is, what we like to do with our clients, and what I loved doing with you, and how you kind of figure out how you're different than everyone else, is something that we say the brand values, right? So it's like, what sets you apart? What are these key elements that set you apart from everyone else in the industry that are unique to you, that you can continue to bring into your website, into your copywriting, into your brand, and have something. And I like the consults of how we do them, and why I like this is because it's tangible, right? So it's like when we go to the next phase for Rebecca in the brand design, and we're doing the website, and she doesn't like something, or she changes her mind halfway through, because a lot of my clients are like, not Rebecca, but some of my clients are like, well, actually, I saw this one website and I really like it and I want to do this instead. And I can say, well, let's go back to the 100-page document that my team did for you that says, let's get you back on track with where your goals are, where your values are, and streamline of what makes it different. But one of them, for Rebecca specifically, was her, that she's extremely detail oriented. She definitely was the very beginning, I think, in the industry to start with the flat lace, and the education side of things, and really kind of honing in on that. You were doing an incredible job of telling the stories through color, right? And the posing and all those things that you do. And so kind of being able to work and then just the educational side of things, that I also think is super unique to you. We're able to take that and then from there and these specific values that Rebecca has, we have some really cool concepts for the website and how that's going to get carried over to the rest of her brand. Everyone's different, and coming up with uh, what that is for you and your business will really help it follow through on all accounts.
Something I've been trying through the rebrand process to do is like really put on blinders. And I looked at quote unquote competitors' websites who, like, by the way, my competitors are my friends. Like, I love all of them. I just lost a wedding to one of these competitors and I'm so happy for, like, I'm sad because like, yeah, it was a cool client, but like, good, like, yay for the person who booked it. Like, I hold no um bad towards the no bad feelings, and I have sent weddings to this person and they have sent weddings back to me. I truly believe what I said earlier, that the rising tide rises all ships and there is room for us all. So I really have been trying to like put on those blinders, and that's something that like I advise like even to photographers within their work and to planners like with their design eye is like stop looking at other wedding industry things and look outside the industry. That like one of the things I've loved about working with you is you pulled like fine art websites. Like we were looking at like, okay, what does Gagosian do? Like what does Magnum do? Like what do these outside of the wedding world photography based like galleries or agencies, like what are they doing? And that's the standard that I'm holding myself accountable to. So I think the more like you can try to put on those blinders, yeah, I try as we were as you were chatting, I went back and looked in our text chain to see because you had come up with like what I thought was the most hysterical euphemism for myself, which Sarah said that I have unique convictions, which I was like, oh, what a lovely way of saying that I am a total brat who digs her feet in so hard on what she cares deeply about. But that's who I am, and I care deeply about my friends. I care deeply about you, and I'm gonna piss you off digging my feet in because I care about you.
I'm gonna
And you do
need
the
to
same.
rewrite
You
it.
do the same. I literally like, and as I was checking through our text chain, I had a text to a dear friend of both of ours and another client of yours, Heather from Amorology, and we were texting yesterday about how annoyed we were with you that you're making us blog, that neither of us blog, and I wrote like something like super annoyed but also super grateful. And that's what a good friend should be. That's what a good colleague should be. It should be that person who, like, yeah, you're a little annoyed with because they're pushing you outside of your car. Like, Sarah, how many times have you been a little annoyed with me?
The times on my wedding day or other than like,
Dude,
just kidding.
rude. You weren't annoyed. You cried on your wedding day when I
I
put on
know.
our song and she burst into tears.
But I will also say, I'm gonna like piggyback off that, love you, but I will also say when it comes to blogging, it's very everyone is different in terms of what like I'm going to yeah, I'm gonna say it. Sometimes people don't necessarily need it. I would say that you need it specifically, and it might not necessarily be for your actual wedding website. It would be actually more for your education side of things. And Heather needs to do it because she's a planner, and we really need to rank locally with an SEO. Sorry, it's a whole thing. Planners also really do more SEO part. Like planners don't necessarily think they need to like
And it's good for photographers too. I mean, I work a more international market and I don't tend to work a lot of venues multiple times, but for photographers who do, that blogging at those venues that you're working at time and time again is very smart and very important. And that's as I move into new phases in my business, if I want to stay more, I mean, there aren't really many venues I shoot at locally here in LA, but that would be an important part. And that's why working with a branding person like yourself can help you really be targeted. And it's I think it was like a Will and Grace episode, which this is like a random thing to reference, but it was like I think it was like one of the characters was like copying the personal training of someone. I think it was like Grace probably was like following the exercises of a personal trainer for another like he was training a different person at the gym and she was like copying the exercises and then was really mad because she was like my butt's getting bigger and like I'm not like whatever it was, like she was upset by the results and the trainer was like, yeah, because that's her goal, like her goal is to minimize her chest and make her butt bigger. And she was like, damn it. And I'm probably totally screwing up this analogy, but it's the like health and fitness isn't like one size fits all. Branding is not one size fits all. So you have to, that's a whole long way of
Yeah,
saying you
true.
got to
Yeah.
identify your goals. Everyone has their own path and their own things that are right for them. And what's right for someone might be very wrong for someone else.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily recommend blogging for
You're like, for the record.
for the record, well, I wouldn't recommend blogging for your website for your wedding website because your references at a certain point when you hit in the luxury market, the way you get clients is strictly referrals for the most part. Like I have a very hard time thinking that someone's going to like Google your name and then, ha- unless it's coming through a referral from a planner.
Well, and I
Because,
only want to work with full service
right,
planners. So
exactly.
that's
So
like, I
that's
mean,
again,
I love when a client finds me and I get to recommend a planner. Like I just did that and it's so awesome. I love being able to pay it back to planners who've been able to feed me. Like I'm so appreciative, but that's maybe one or two a year max. Like the most part, it's the other way around.
and I would say from a lot of my clients, that's really what ends up happening. So I'm not necessarily always recommending the blogging, but with planners, I am as well because they're needing to get those clients. And just from the standpoint within the competitor research, when we do competitor research, um, a lot of planners actually pay um, for pay to play within just ads and things like that. And a lot of times planners don't necessarily realize that. And so it's even with Heather specifically of saying, okay, well, we looked at your competitors and they're paying. That's why they're ahead of you. So you either can pay or you can write some blog articles and that will bump you up. Um, Solution.
And then it's more holistically where it's coming
Yeah.
from because brides are smart. Brides realize
And we can
mostly pay to play, like how that's
Right,
factoring.
exactly. And on top of that, from looking at from where her competitors are and what makes sense, we can also establish like what the best articles are going to be based off of that are going to do well.
Yeah. Well, so I want to talk a little bit like broadly
Right.
about like for people who aren't as familiar with the idea of branding, because I really like I see building your business a little bit like I hate to like say a pyramid because I don't want people like not building pyramid schemes over here, but I think you need that strong foundation, you need that strong base. So like the number one thing that I tell people to do when they're like, how do I start my business? How do I get into this next market? What do I do? The first thing is, and like there's gonna like there are people who skip this step and they still have great businesses. So like this is my humble opinion of what I believe is how you build a business that's based on longevity and based on artistic fulfillment. Like you're going to be excited to get out of bed every morning and you're creating work that you are proud of. That first step is creating a strong piece of work. I will say I had dinner last night with a friend who's not in the weddings. She's in the film industry, and I asked her if I could steal this line. So thank you, Lauren, if you are listening. She said that she was like, I don't always need to be artistically fulfilled. Let me buy a house and I'll fill the house with art. And I was dying. I was like, that is so good. Ooh, okay. Rewind back into our little pyramid. So that base is your work. For Sarah, that was all those pieces that she took from her other jobs, like building her team. She's creating a strong product. For me as a photographer, that's making sure I am mastering all of my hard skills, and that I have like the timeline management, the shot list management. I know how to pose my clients. I know how to do their details. Like I'm all of those things. Like that is that first layer. And then a lot of times people go right into like, okay, well now I need the marketing. I need to put my work out there. I need to get all the clients, and they forget the branding step. And I would say this is the number one mistake that I see photographers and planners and florists, like people like yeah, I see this all the time when I'm looking through people's portfolios, where they are not putting their best foot forward. Like I say, and I just talked with Barbie Walters from Linden Lane about this, and you can listen to that in her episode, where we talk about like do everything learn as much as you can in the beginning, like take on all the work you can, but do not show all of that work. Absolutely, like, make the mistakes, but then only show what you want to be doing. And I think that's where like someone like Sarah comes in and tells you, like I say, you need that bitchy best friend who's going to be like, "Oh, do you see that girl's hair? Do you see her nails? Do not post it. Do not share that." And I'm lucky that my best friend is an actual branding expert. Before I had Sarah in my life, it was my sister. My sister was the first person to like yell at me over this styled shoot that I had participated in at WPPI, and it was tacky. But I didn't know what I was doing. I was brand new. I was like 2012. And my sister was like, "Oh my God, you cannot post that like beauty queen, crunchy hair and cowboy boots. Like, that's not the client you want." And I was like, "Oh, but the bride was so pretty. She was a model." And my sister was like, "She looks like she's a model for like the dollar store. Hell no." And that was like my like, oh, intro to branding. I never thought about it. And that is the mistake that I see going through people's portfolios time and time and time again. I'd love, Sarah, for like someone from your perspective, because you do help so many wonderful photographers put on styled shoots. Like, I have very particular opinions on how I believe styled shoot images should be used and how they should be your branding and not your marketing. I'd love to hear, and by that I mean they're what's setting the tone of what client you want to attract versus they're the actual pieces that are attracting those clients to you. I truly believe that like working with real couples and real weddings is how you're going to get those people in, but you do need the branding. And now I'm just talking for too long. So Sarah, you tell us your thoughts on where styled shoots have their place in our branding, and are they important? Should people be doing them?
So I was just having this conversation with a recent photographer, Shannon Moffat, and we're going through. We just finished up her consult, and we're going to the next phases of the brand design and things like that, and website. And she said, "Do I need a styled shoot?" And again, I had the same client ask this similarly, who was a wedding planner, and a lot of that is, I'll say that they have their time and place. I would say, if you're starting out in the business and you need a portfolio, that is a perfect way to get photos, to get practice, to get some beautiful content if you're not necessarily having the weddings that you're booking. When you're trying to get, there's that next phase, right? I feel like there are different like tiers.
Yeah,
Um,
different stages.
yeah, there are different stages. So you're kind of at the beginning, and then you're at this middle phase wanting to get to, the luxury market. Um, or you're in the luxury market and you're wanting to get a step above that, and whatever. So
Ultra luxury, ultra high net
ultra
worth,
luxury,
ultra
whatever phase,
luxury.
the phases. But the biggest element for this, and where I think style sheets can be beneficial, is when we've done the consultation, you're getting into the branding, you're working on the website. What images, when we're putting together a website, do you still need, right? I'm a lot of times curating, the overall arching, like, is this the best photo that you have ever taken in your life? Because it's going to be the front page of your website. Said it 7 years, 10 years ago, say it now. It's the same thing. So, and if you, from there, you can also figure out what's missing in your portfolio. So for the a specific client who wanted to do a shoot, she didn't have enough images of fashion, right? And a lot of that right now, just within your overall image strategy, is that's trending right now, right? You kind of want the black and white and the moody and the fashion and these really interesting kind of photojournalistic approach to it. She doesn't shoot like that. And just from the overall, her weddings that she currently has, it's a lot of ball gowns and not necessarily the editorial, um, moody approach to the fashion that she's wanting. So if she
There's a
were,
disconnect between who her clients are and who she wants her clients to be. Which, if she wants those ballroom or ball gown, that's fine. Like, there's a time and a place for everyone. But the problem is when you have something and you want something else.
yes, thank you for that. Yes. So that would be a great, that's a great opportunity in terms of where I would say, okay, this would work for a style shoot. This is what you would want to do. I like, whenever I have clients talk about a styled shoot, my biggest goal and recommendation is doing a content strategy. And I even from when I started with Rich, and potentially with you or with other clients, what I would do is I would get together like a contact sheet, right? Which is like the shot list, that bringing back and rewinding within the production side of my brain at the knot, where when you're working with a specific client and you're wanting to get the images for them specifically, if they're selling a product or whatever it is, it has to be a shot list. And so I would say that if you're doing styled shoots, it should work as a content strategy, and you're only getting those images specifically that you need for it, right? Like you might like cake is a great example. Okay, a lot of times people have ugly cakes at a wedding and they don't necessarily photograph it, and it's always in crap lighting. And so hey, do a styled shoot on cakes, right? Like it could be, and then you have a whole plethora of cakes that you have, and you know how to photograph it, and it looks great. It's like kind of filling in the holes, I would say, than anything else. So then you can actually be strategic about it, and then you utilize those images specifically for your marketing purposes, rather than just going in because you think you need it. It's attracting the ideal client.
I say that with shoes and invites too all the time, that if you're stuck shooting Bagley Mishka, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with Bagley Mishka, but if you're shooting Bagley Mishka and you want to be shooting Manolo Blahnik, Jimmy Choo, whatever, the go from the, which, like, again, like we're working in such a rarefied environment, and I get that we are so lucky in this ultra luxury market, but like, you're shooting a $200 shoe and you want to be shooting a $2,000 shoe, which I've shot $2,000 shoes many a time. And like that's where a shoot can be a great way to get that. If you're shooting, like Minted can have really beautiful invites, like nothing against Minted, but if you're shooting that and you want to be working more with full branding people who are coming in and branding every part of the day, reaching out to a stationery designer and getting those invites and having that be part of your portfolio is a great place to start with those branded images and having them in your portfolio. And if you don't, like, we are judged by I think I've already said this in this episode, but we are judged on things that have nothing to do with our skills as a photographer, our skills as a designer, whatever it is. Like if you have a bride who has really tacky nails, and you like, and like one person's tacky is another person's luxury. Like we need to remember that. But like your potential client who thinks that's tacky is going to see that and associate you as a tacky photographer. So making sure that you are positioning yourself every step of the way to be attracting those ideal clients is so important. That when we look at luxury brands, it's the reason we call them brands. When we're talking about Chanel, we're talking like the heritage brands, we're talking about Chanel, we're talking about Hermes, we're talking about Dior. There's a like those the reason they get to charge, that Hermes gets to charge $40,000 for a Birkin, is not because they are making a $40,000 bag. It is branding. Branding is everything. So if you aren't starting there, you're going to struggle to succeed in the luxury market.
I would also piggyback off of that. Um, I think a lot of times I'll have photographers that will want to do branding, and they're first just starting their business, and they're wanting to invest, which is great. And I think there is something to say when you're just starting off of definitely investing, making sure you're kind of doing that process. Have a great website, have a a brand that will work for now, but so much changes in the first 5 years of your business. So I think, I don't know if I'm going to completely confuse everyone by saying this, but I would also say the best time, at least for my clients that I've seen, is reevaluating your business at around the 5 year mark, because that's at that point where I feel like most of my clients are very entrenched in their beliefs, their goals, how they shoot, how they run their business, what they're good at. Um, and it makes the process when it comes to the investing in the social media and the website design and the actual branding and SEO, all of it, so much better, because then you're not redoing it in another 5 years from now because you kind of just like put a band-aid on it. Again, with clients that I'll have that are just starting out, doing the holistic approach is even even better, because we're able to see the vision of where we know that you're going to go, right? Because I think a lot of it within the first 3 to 4 years of business, you have no idea that you at a certain point when you get to the phase where you don't need to blog because your recommendations are coming from planners or whatever it is, and the connections that you have.
And I encourage my students to actually reevaluate once a year or twice a year, or just when you've had a major life change. A lot of times when I've reevaluated things, it was because I was forced to. I moved cities, I had new health challenges, I had a pandemic. We all had a pandemic. I met my husband. All of those things. Your constant, your life is evolving, and your goals need to evolve with them. So you want to always kind of take that step back and ask yourself if your top line goals are still serving your life and where you want it to go. So if you decide that you're ready to family plan, or you decide that you want to buy a house and you want to put your nose to the grindstone, whatever it is, for a little longer, and you're like, okay, this year is gonna suck. I'm gonna, like, be careful. Do not work yourself into the ground, because you only have one body, and you break it, you're stuck. Saying, from coming from someone who has broken their body, um, so be careful. But like, yeah, like you might go through a phase where you're like, I'm gonna push the pedal to the metal, and then the next year you might be like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that again. Now is when I'm gonna have a baby, and or I'm going to travel, like whatever it is. Like, you can have any goal you want. That's what's cool. We're entrepreneurs. We can do whatever we want. But we need to make sure that we're setting the correct goal so we know where we're aiming. And that's what branding is. That's branding, is knowing where to aim yourself. And I feel like on that note, we can keep talking forever, which we're going to. We haven't even gotten to our behind the frame yet. So I think that this episode officially needs to be a two-parter. Congratulations, Sarah K. Love. You are my first two-parter. Woo! So I am going to say goodbye. We're both going to say goodbye to all of you, and then welcome you back next week with our part two. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us. And as I said, stay tuned. We're going to have part two coming next week for you guys. But in the meantime, I want to make sure we're providing all of the right places for you to connect with Sarah and find her before we come back with exciting next week. So Sarah, where can people find you?
So my website is sarahklove.com, Instagram, Sarah K Love.
Gotta love it. That's some good branding, easy to
Yeah, it's
find.
got some good branding all the way across Pinterest, all of it. So it's,
Perfect.
yep, just my name.
And that's going to be in the show notes, guys. So you can click and find it, and then tune in next week for part two.
Thanks, guys.